This camera. You're live.
Is it
We are
supposed to be
live.
yellow or supposed to be red?
Should
It's
be orange.
Well,
That's flashing. That one's flashing. They're both SSDs are recording.
sweet. We got flashing lights.
We've got flashing lights. I've got snare in my headphones. Chris has got us looking crispy.
Crispy or crunchy?
Crispy. Crunchy's bad. That sounds bad. It sounds like an injury.
It's hippies.
My elbow's crunchy. So, anyways, welcome to Amateur Audiophile. So, today we're going to discuss bass. So, I'm Justin.
I'm Neil.
This is Neil. So, whether you're really into movies, home theaters, or you're into just listening to music, either way, you got to have good bass.
Bass can make it or break the system.
That's what you feel. You don't feel the highs. You feel the lows.
You want to be immersed and feel like you're there, you got to
Yeah.
be able to feel it.
Exactly. So let's do like a good, better, best and figure out like from a complete noob up to, we're not going to talk about experts or anything because those guys know what they're doing. Let's go from like a noob to somebody that's kind of like ourselves, an amateur audiophile. If I'm going in to set up my first either listening room or home theater, where do we start when we're trying to figure out where to put our subwoofers?
Well, so from my understanding, a subwoofer in the corner will always give you more bass because
Yes.
you get what they call room gain, right? Because of in the corner, the way it
From both
reflects.
walls.
Right, you
Yeah.
get it from both walls. So putting a sub in the corner, if you only have one, you got to find the corner. Now,
So that's if you have one.
that's if you got one. Yeah, if you don't
So
have one,
typically your first system, you're going to have one? You're going to have one subwoofer.
yeah, I mean, one subwoofer, you go like buy a system or something like that that was
Yeah.
come with one. So that's when most people really started. I mean, that's where I started.
Yeah.
For years, I only had one.
Yeah, me too.
And then, of course, deciding which corner is the best.
Yeah.
There's really no like formula for that say, okay, well, this corner is better than this corner, because that all depends on the room, your seating position, your setup. So the best way is really just there's two ways. You got what they call a subwoofer crawl,
Yep.
which is
The bass crawl.
the bass crawl, yeah. So the theory behind that is you kind of set your subwoofer in your seating position, and you crawl around on the floor and try to find which area sounds the best to you, and that is where you then put the subwoofer.
Yeah.
And in turn, the room will reflect back to that same spot, so your seating position will have the best bass.
So
Or you can
why is that better than just moving the subwoofer around the room and seeing where it sounds best?
Well, to me, it's a lot easier to move myself around the room into a bunch of different corners than just constantly moving the subwoofer around and run the cable all over the place.
Yeah.
So, of course, you can. You could just kind of set in this corner, listen, set in
Yeah.
this corner, listen. And that neither one of them is technically wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know
I think where that would come in most likely would be, say you're pretty limited on where you can put the subwoofer and you're like, okay, I've got these three places. Mm-hmm. Then I would say try all three of those places. So if it's like not a dedicated room, so like say it's your living room or your den, I would say try those three places, because especially if you have it set up for movies and for music and for sports, like whatever it is, whatever track you're testing with is not always going to hit every single level.
No.
So like say you're using bass heavy music to test it, 50 hertz and up. Well, if you then turn around and watch a movie based off of those settings, you may have a node in there where you're just got a complete dip and you have no bass below 50 from where it's setting, and you're not going to know that.
Right, 100%.
So if you're limited to two or three places, try all three and then watch or listen to everything that you're going to be listening to in those two or three places. I think that's probably, if you have no experience, that's going to be the best place to start.
And just kind of try to feel it for yourself, like what sounds the best to you everybody kind of likes a little bit different aspects, but so that's really like the easiest way.
Yeah.
Now, part where I really started learning my lessons is when I first upgraded to 2 subwoofers. I remember when I got some speakers on the down low on a really good price, and that kind of snowballed some things for me, and I kept wanting to get better and better. It was when I first got my first pair of Bowers & Wilkinson speakers. I got those on a really, really good price.
Right.
So that kind of snowballed for me. So from there on, I ended up getting 2 subwoofers, and I remember I was so focused on the looks, right?
Yeah.
So I had my setup, right? I had my TV, I had my receiver, I had the subs first.
Yep.
And then I moved the speakers out to the side of the subs, and I mean, like,
It looks great, man.
I mean, it just looks so good. And I
that,
remember
when you look online and in magazines and stuff, like that's always, especially like from the dealers or from the manufacturers, that's what you're going to see.
Yeah, that's
because it looks the best.
Yeah, that's definitely a look you go for,
Yeah.
I guess. So I kind of wanted that stage appeal, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And it did look great, but I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, well, shit, I got more subwoofers and better subwoofers because I bought new ones than what I had before. And I still felt like I was missing something because the subwoofer came out of the corner into the front center stage, essentially.
Right.
And yes, I had twice the output power. And those 2 subs would rumble so hard, everything in the house would shake.
Yeah.
But it still didn't sound quite right.
Yeah. Yeah, it would just vibrate everything, but it wasn't you weren't feeling it.
I could hear everything rattle in the room.
Yeah.
Everything
but
was
you weren't
rattling,
feeling it because you
man.
were sitting in the wrong place.
Because I kept turning that shit up. I kept turning them up. I was like, nope, it's not enough yet. Not enough.
Yeah.
And now all I hear is rattling. So that's when things really started getting a little bit more serious for me. And I actually invested into what's called a U-mic.
Yep.
And a program called RU.
Yeah,
where you can
room
actually,
equalization wizard.
Yep, yeah.
Yep. REW, RU, whatever you want to call it.
And so I set up the microphone and I measured, and I noticed that I was just missing a huge area of spectrum in the bass in my seat.
Just had big gaps right where you're sitting.
So I ended up actually putting 1 subwoofer back in the corner it was originally, and then 1 subwoofer back in the corner behind me.
Right.
And I ran the same measurement again, and I was able to turn my subwoofers back down to about half of what they were.
Right.
And it is 10 times better than it was.
Yeah.
So subwoofer placement is definitely...
It's everything.
It's everything, yeah.
Especially if you've only got 1 or 2 subs. I'm a big fan of putting them in the corner. That's where I always start. And just because I like getting the, using both of the walls to your advantage. Ideally, I prefer to have 3 or 4 subwoofers. So if I only have 2, I like to put them in the front corners, both left and right, if I can, and then kind of move them from there. If I've got 3, I like to go front corners and then center in the rear. Obviously, 4 is going to be ideal. I love going all 4 corners because then you just feel everything.
I mean, if you got 4 corners, it's ideal. Now,
there's no need to really move anything around at that point. Like
I've seen some measurements though where depending on the room, instead of putting them on the corners,
you put them halfway down the walls.
If you put them halfway down the walls, now that you got 4, so you got kind of 1 front and center, 1 rear center, and then flanking left and right. But
which is fine if you don't have an entertainment center, if your couch doesn't have to be close to the wall or anything like that. But most people, they're going to have an entertainment center right there in the front. So if you run a projector, that's going to work really well. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be the case.
It wasn't feasible for me, I can tell you that much. Not the way my setup is. Mine's really inside my den, and it's not a dedicated home theater. It's one of these life goals I got. One of these days, I'll hopefully have like a true dedicated movie room. But right now, it's really more of a multi-purpose room. I got my desk, got my computer, and stuff like that. So
that's how mine was at the old house. Like it was 2/3. I mean, it's basically set up exactly like my office is now. It was 2/3 theater and then 1/3 office space because I had my office space behind the recliners, and then the rest of it was theater. But I also had my extra refrigerator in there and storage, and it also tripled as a pantry. It was definitely a multi-purpose room. So, I mean, I'm right there with you. That's one of my life goals is to have an actual dedicated room to just being nothing but a theater.
You got to start somewhere, though. You know, you really got to start, I think, with the system and build up a system to where you really start enjoying it, to where then you can make that leap and go forward and say, okay, you know, this is really what I want, or this is really what I need to move to. So
yeah, that's why I'm enjoying setting up a demo room here. It's nice to be able to have a place here at the office. It sucks not having it at home, you know, because I can't like watch it with the family and stuff. But the couple of nights a week that I stay here, it's pretty cool.
right, yeah.
So it's pretty cool to have a couch in the middle of a demo room that turns into a bed, and I can sleep in there and watch Fallout like I did last night.
The good news is there you can watch whatever you want to without fighting over the wife, which movie you're going to watch.
Yeah, or everybody's trying to go to sleep, turn it down.
Luckily, I don't have that issue.
Yeah.
But it's definitely it takes us about an hour to figure out what movie we're going to watch first. So
No, yeah, I do that with myself. I'll watch 25 previews before I'll finally settle on the first one that I watched.
yeah,
Either that or I'll end up rewatching something I've seen 20 times.
yeah. My wife likes to rewatch stuff a lot too. So
If it's good enough, I do. I mean,
she's got a couple movies and she's got to watch those over and over.
It's sadly for me, it's Fast and the Furious. Just nostalgia, man.
You lost.
It's such a corny movie, but it's so much fun to watch.
The Tokyo Drift was like
That was the peak.
yes, like
It was all downhill after that.
yes. You kind of had you had your first one. And I was like, this is dope. You had your second one, killed
Yeah.
it.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, when I say Fast and the Furious, I mean the original, The Fast and the Furious.
Oh, okay.
I will watch that and Tokyo Drift. And then after that, I've probably seen each one like once. I think I watched Too Fast, Too Furious maybe 3 times. The rest of them, I was one and done. I haven't even seen the last 2.
I've lost count on the second one.
After Paul Walker was gone, there was no point.
It's not the real deal anymore.
Sorry, Vin Diesel.
I mean, it's just we all know he made it right.
Yeah, no.
We can say that now.
Why has somebody not came out with just a real Car Guys movie? Like, they could recreate the Fast and the Furious nowadays, especially with the popularity of street racing, like Street Outlaws and stuff. I mean, that stuff blew up. They could make a real high production, like, studio movie around that world and actually make it for Car Guys, and it would be a hit. I don't know why nobody's done it yet.
I think because everything they do on those is not the real deal cars. They kind of make it look cool from the outside, but it's still not the real thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like, have Car Guys like write do all the directing and the stunts and everything, not all this CGI and I don't know. We're getting off topic, but that's because
that's not really auto related, though, is it?
Well, it is because the soundtrack is amazing. Like, it's even though it's CGI and it's all the crap's going through the engine, like, it sounds awesome when you got a really good sound system. Like, and that's probably the reason that, like, I'm not gonna watch that if I'm somewhere, like, if I'm in a hotel room and I have just the freaking TV, I'm not gonna watch it. But if I'm at home,
it doesn't feel the same.
No, it doesn't. Like, 90% of the enjoyment of that movie is the sound. There's a lot of bass, there's a lot of moving stuff, and like, even though it's an older movie, like, it gets down. It sounds good.
You know, there's one movie that I watched long ago and then rewatched not too long ago, and this was after I got my Atmos system set up and everything like that. And I gotta admit, rewatching the movie with the new Atmos system changed the movie for me.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, dude, I watched Top Gun Maverick, and when I watched it the first time was in theaters. And because that was like the one movie, like, in the last 10 years, I was like, I want to go watch it. So, like, I watched the original Top Gun and then immediately went to the movie theater and watched them, like, back to back. Mm-hmm. The soundtrack I was a little disappointed with because I watched it in my theater, the original, and then went and watched the new one at the AMC. And, like, it sounded good, obviously, but it wasn't the same.
No, it's not.
Especially when it comes to the bass. Like, you just don't feel the bass in a movie theater.
It's just really loud. I mean, when you go to the movie, they
you
really
hear
crank
the
it
bass,
up.
but you don't feel it.
Yeah.
It's totally different. You don't get that chest thump.
Well, it's hard for like to build up that pressure, to pressurize
Yeah.
the room when the room is that big.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to get that pressure going.
Yep.
So it's easier to do that in a small home theater
Yeah.
or a living room or, you know.
Yeah, so when we
a
built
den.
that 7.4.6 Atmos system, that was the movie that was our premiere movie with the homeowners was Matt. And that's what he kept talking about. He's like, I want a home theater because I want to watch this movie. And so like I got to rewatch it in a system that I built and tuned and with the client and get his reaction. And dude, watching that thing with 6 Atmos speakers and 4 subwoofers, holy crap. Completely different. Like you could almost watch the movie and not even pay attention to the screen at all. Like you just felt like you were there.
So when are we going to get to do a tour of this?
We're going to do a podcast there. So he actually texted me this morning. We're doing a encapsulation on his house after the pest control company gets done getting rid of whatever rodents they had issues with in the crawl space. Once we go back over there, we're gonna record 2 podcasts over there. So we're gonna record our Crawl Dads podcast in the crawl space with Josh and Chris, and then you and I are going to interview him in the theater, and we're going to do a podcast from the theater because it's completely sound treated, soundproofed, everything. So I want to see what the audio difference is, even with these mics and everything, recording in there. Mm-hmm. And you know, I've got the LED lights and the tray ceilings and under the chairs and behind the screen and all that stuff. So like, it's going to look sick. We're probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks out from doing that. We've got to go back over there and replace his screen.
What's wrong with the screen?
It has a scratch on it.
Wasn't it a projector or was it a...
It was a UHD projector
So how do you get a scratch on that?
when it was getting installed.
Oh, okay. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That wasn't you, though. You didn't.
It was not me. I did a lot of the yelling, though. It was a $3,000 screen. Somebody had a pencil hanging out of their pocket, and they were, you know, that I had the built-in entertainment center, so you've got to step up into that because I built the cavity for the UHD projector to sit in so you don't see it. It's behind the center channel speaker. Mm-hmm. And so you're standing down in this cavity, and so the bottom of the screen is like right at your belt height. And one of my guys had a pencil hanging out of his back pocket and didn't realize that it was almost coming out. And when he turned around, because you've only got like this much room to move, a couple of feet, and he scratched it. And you know, it's the light blocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like the whole thing's like plastic.
Yeah, it's ambient light rejection.
Yes, the ambient light rejection gray screen, $3,000 for 120.
You can get those cheaper than that.
I've got to replace it with what I put up there because that's what he paid for. So, but we will have a 120-inch light rejection screen for the office here that's just got a tiny little scratch on it that you won't even notice except for when the screen's white.
Right.
You can only see it when there's white on the screen.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you couldn't tell otherwise.
We'll be able to tell because you'll know it's there. But when other people come and see it, they're not even going to notice it.
As long as there's something bright enough on the display, I don't think you'll notice.
Yeah,
it.
for a $3,000 screen that I don't have to, like, it's already there. Right? I'm not going to buy another one. So I think we're gonna put it somewhere in here. It's going to be sick. And you know, those freaking kits that you buy, you basically buy the screen, they send you the projector for free. So I'm just going to order another kit. It's like another $500 to get the projector too. Mm-hmm. So why not? So we're going to have an ultra short throw projector and a 120-inch screen here to do something with.
Let's do it.
Let's do it, man.
Nothing to it but to do.
Yeah, so we should have that in here, I don't know, within like 3 to 6 weeks, possibly. And so we'll do a video series on that, on installing that. Anyway, so back to bass.
Yeah,
You know,
lost the
we're talking
focus
about all the, I mean, that's the point of a podcast, right? We just sit here and just talk. So yeah, so if you're a complete noob, you got your sub in there, you've never had a home theater before, you're boom, boom, boom. You're like, oh man, this sounds amazing. Don't stop there. Take your subwoofer, sit it in your seat, put something on repeat that's bass heavy that you like to listen to. Music is the easiest because in movies you're going to have too much dead space between the
Really
the bass.
nowadays you can even there's some apps that you can get, and they'll play like a constant bass note.
Yep.
And that way you can really tell instantly because there's not
Yeah.
everything else going around. So I would really just play get a frequency generator on your phone or something like that, play a bass note, and just kind of play that the entire time as you're changing your settings, and that way you can really tell.
Yeah, so here's what you need. You'll need a long RCA cable, and you'll probably need an extension cord. Set that thing in your seat, play something, crank it up, and then crawl your ass around the edge of your room and figure out where it sounds the best to you while you're in the floor. And then what you're going to do is you're going to switch positions with your subwoofer, and you're going to listen to it, and you're going to say, oh my God, that sounds so much better. And that's going to get you 80% of the way there. Then you can go in. So say you don't have a microphone. And obviously, so say you have a Denon system and it's got the Odyssey microphone that comes with it, and that's all you've got. You don't have a DSP. You don't have I just had a total brain fart. What's the microphone called? It's a calibrated microphone. You don't have like a calibrated mic. Dayton Audio's got one now, by the way. It's like $140. I saw that yesterday. I'm probably going to order one.
I forget how much I paid for mine.
The mini DSPs that I saw were like $250.
I got the U-Mic 1.
The U-Mic 1, I think those are like $180. That's a little under $200. They have a new one that just came out too. Well, I say just came out. I don't know how long it's been.
I think when I bought one quite a while ago.
Yeah.
I want to say they were $129.
Yeah, but everything's doubled since then.
Yeah, this was like
a Big Mac's like $9 now.
This was post-pandemic.
Oh, was it?
Or pre-pandemic, not post. Pre-pandemic.
Yeah, that's one. It's probably doubled by now.
Yeah, I bought it pre-pandemic, so I think it was like $129 is what I paid for it.
Yeah, I think the 2 I looked earlier today. It's like $200 and something now.
Yeah, the 2 was under $200.
Dang.
At the time.
It's crazy. But I think the Dayton Audio one was like 140 and 150 and somewhere. Don't quote me on that, but I know it's cheaper.
I won't.
Anyways, if you don't have all that stuff and you just have your Odyssey mic, do the bass crawl before you run your calibration. Get your subwoofer in the right position the best you can. Get your speakers pointed the right position. Then do your calibration. That'll get you a few more percentage points based on what your setup is and how your room is, everything. So that's kind of like your entry level. You can do that in 30 minutes. It's not a big deal, and it'll probably make a world of difference. So say you've got a basic little home theater system, you're listening to this, and you just threw your subwoofer where you thought it was going to sound the best or where you thought you looked at the best. Try it out. Send one of us a message and let me know what the difference is. Like, I would love to do some videos on that, honestly, and do some actual testing to show the differences.
So I got an interesting question. And I know for me, this was a huge confusion for the longest time. And still kind of is almost, actually, to be honest with you. But on the back of the subwoofers, a lot of them, they'll have a knob on the back that says phase.
Yeah.
And they'll go from 0 to 180 degrees. What does that mean for most people? Like, what does that do? Because I remember twisting that knob from 0 to 180 and like standing right there by the subwoofer, obviously, right, because I'm playing with the knob, but I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, I've never really been able to tell the difference either. Let's look it up because I honestly don't know.
I can tell you what it's for, but...
You tell me, because
like,
I have no clue.
For the longest time, that had something really had me kind of confused.
I thought the last one I had a switch on it.
Some of them have a switch, and some of them have a dial. So the dial, you can dial it in more accurately.
Yeah.
Whereas the switch just, switches the phase from 0 to 180 degrees.
I used to think the phase meant when you switched it, instead of it coming out, it would go in. So it would just reverse the movement.
I mean, in theory, yes, right? But so like when you think about your sine curve, to my understanding, and again, this is my understanding, I'm definitely not a professional.
We are amateur audiophiles.
Yeah, we're...
remember the name of the podcast.
Yeah, definitely amateur. But so
we're learning with you.
From what I understood is if you think about your sine curve, it'll move, right? Your sine curve only goes, plus 90 degrees and negative 90 degrees, right? You got your 0 point, you go plus 90, negative 90. So that's why the 180.
Yeah.
So as you're turning it, you're adjusting the point on the sine curve of where that would come. So let's say you got two opposing subwoofers. You got one on the front wall and one on the back wall. So you got both of them set to 0, and that sine curve comes, and as it's going through the room, they're hitting each other.
Yep.
As they hit each other, they cancel each other out.
Yeah.
So instead of moving the subwoofer,
instead of moving them against each other, you want them moving
right,
together.
You want one up and one down, right? So what you would do is you can change the phase on one of them, and that would change them now as they're coming in the center of the room. The frequency is not hitting each other, but they're passing each other. So you get the best of both worlds, essentially.
Yeah.
Without having to
So that's why
relocate.
if you have one subwoofer, changing the phase doesn't mean jack.
Not to my understanding, unless you have a reflection, like, so you have a small room, right? And your subwoofer's playing right here, and it plays, hits the wall, bounces, and comes back. As it hits the wall and bounces and come back, they now can't hit each other.
So you can shorten or lengthen that
sometimes
phase.
You can change that phase.
Yeah.
So, like, if your seating room is right here and it hits the wall here, as it comes back, it's going to null out right here.
Yeah.
Not here.
Yeah, but you're not going to know that without tuning software. I mean, you might be able to hear it, but you're not going to really know.
No, I mean, it's more of like trial and error.
Like
again, right?
it'll show on your calibration.
It would. I mean, if you as you're messing with it,
Yeah.
yes.
But if you do the auto calibration through Odyssey, it's not going to pick that up. Everything look good? Awesome. Hey, Chris.
I'm just checking on you.
Mr.
How you doing?
Shadowface himself, gracing us with his presence.
I'm just checking to see.
We have a new engineer set up in the studio podcast, in the podcast studio. Why did I say studio podcast? We're a podcast in a studio. This is our podcast studio. We need to do a tour of this thing so everybody can kind of see, because all they can really see is our faces and our sweet neon lights behind us. So we have a heck of a setup here. But yeah, so we've talked about the phase. We've talked about the bass crawl. Now, I mean, really, if you've got more than one subwoofer, if you don't have any kind of software, you're not really going to know what you're doing. And it's going to be
Trial and error.
guess and check, and that can take 30 minutes or it can take 30 hours.
I still think, like really setting it up to like perfection, I think is still really hard because there's so many different things that go into it. The biggest challenge for me is the room.
Yeah.
So like I have mine set up in the den, and as you go through the den, there's a little staircase that goes up because it's like a little half level.
Right.
And man, you get into that staircase area, God dang, it's thumping.
Yeah.
And I can't get that same thump in my seat.
Yeah.
That thump's always been in that little. It's like a little hallway essentially, but
It's like a bandpass tube in
man,
there. So
it's wild. It's like every time you walk upstairs, you're just like,
yeah.
shit, where's the bass coming from?
Yeah.
Is this me?
Yeah, we need you to build you a mobile bass trap that just slides in front of that opening. Think that would help?
I don't think the wife would like that.
Yeah, we put it on wheels, so you just roll it in and out. So it's like it's like a baby gate
You say that now, but you've never seen
until
my
she
space.
comes down there in the dark and trips over it.
Maybe you got to see my space sometimes.
Yeah.
Because there's too much shit right there as it is. So I don't think it's gonna work.
No, okay. So I like movable acoustic panels and bass traps. I like making them like if you have windows in your room, I like making panels that you can remove from over the windows.
So there's a way to make acoustic panels and make a poster out of it.
Yep.
And I've been trying to talk my wife into that for years.
Yeah.
She won't let me.
Yeah. Have it printed over the
I know.
acoustically transparent material.
I was going to take like some really cool movie themed posters
Yeah.
and have them printed up and put them up. And she said, nah.
Yeah, it's weird, man. I've ran into people that, like, some people want them to blend into the wall. You know, they want them the same. Like, the guy that went and did an estimate for last week, he wants them to just blend into the wall. Like, so he wants the material the same color as the paint on the wall. I've had other people that want it, like, completely opposite, and they want to trim the panels out in, like, stained wood or wood that's painted the same color as the trim. And then you've got other people that want to make art out of them.
Yeah, I think it's art.
I know, me too. Like in here, like, so I've got 8 acoustic panels waiting for us to figure out what color they're going to be to go in this room here. Because we still have no sound treatments in here, but I've got them in the warehouse. We just haven't covered them yet. They're already built. We use the rock wool, and since we use the rock wool, I put landscaping fabric. I wrap the whole thing in landscaping fabric just to keep that stuff from moving around and coming out, and then we put the material on top of that. I want to take them and, you know how like you take a piece of art and it looks like one like design painting, and then they like cut it into sections and separate it they look like they look like it was just cut. I want to kind of do that. Really?
God, noob around here.
I know, man.
I thought we were professionals.
Oh my God.
OMG. Didn't warn you up, huh?
Yeah. These guys can't figure anything out on their own. So,
I'm gonna help.
hey, Chris, edit that out. I'm sure he won't. But I have my phone on vibrate, so I don't know how it rang through. Or does the iPhone have that new thing? Yeah, if somebody calls you 3 times, it'll ring on the 3rd.
Well, if they call you 3 times back to back, it's probably an emergency.
It's not an emergency. It's a question. And my answer to that question is,
Must be an important question.
what would you have done if you could not get a hold of me?
Nothing.
And then when they answer that, they typically have the right answer. They just didn't want to come up with the right answer. So, but anyways, so single subwoofer, do the bass crawl, figured it out, you got it sounding good. Now you want to add a second subwoofer because you need more bass. Or do you go with a bigger subwoofer?
I'd always go with a second subwoofer first before going with a bigger one.
Why?
Because you'll get more performance out of 2 small ones than you will 1 big one.
Exactly.
Because even though, essentially, you talk about the surface area of the subwoofer, of how much air that can move. Well, 2 10-inch subwoofers can move more air than 1 12-inch subwoofer.
With the same power.
Even with a little bit more power.
Yeah.
Like if you get, equally, like let's say you got, and when we talk about wattage, you always got to be real careful because, yes, there is a power rating to everything, but the power rating is not your like magic gauge because there's so much more that goes into effect with that when you talk about the efficiency of the speaker. When you talk about the design of the speaker, the design of the ports, is it a sealed speaker or a ported speaker or sub, let's phrase that. But so 500 watts does not mean 500 watts.
Right.
Volume or output power. You can have, and I've seen it actually. I remember a long time ago when I was younger, I worked at a car audio shop, and the owner there, he had these like little bookshelf speakers that he had gotten that were like stupid expensive. And I remember looking at them, and I was still pretty young at the time, and I remember looking at them, they were like 30 or 40 watts. I'm like, well, what
What are you going to do with that?
What's this?
Come on, buddy.
40 watts?
40 watts?
What are we getting with this, right? And
My
so,
computer speakers do that.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so he was like, hold on a second, let me show you, right? And so we hooked him up, and he turned them up in the showroom that we had at the time, and those 2 little bookshelf speakers filled that showroom like I've never heard before.
Yeah.
So that's why there's always a lot that goes into like the design and everything like that. But anyways, back to my point. So let's say we got 2 500-watt 10-inch subwoofers and 1 1,000-watt 12-inch subwoofer. I would still rather have the 2 500s on a 10 than the 1,000 at a 12.
Yeah.
Because you're still going to get more performance out of that. On top of that, now you have more capabilities of playing with placement.
You can cover more of the room.
And you can get a lot more spread throughout the room instead of just trying to find that like one lonely sweet spot. Because I don't know about you, but I do watch a movie by myself from time to time. But most of the time I got company when I watch a movie.
Yeah.
Right? So do you want your company to be able to sit in a seat spot as well, or are you just selfish and just want it for yourself?
Yeah, it depends on who you are. I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, I mean,
I've had clients tell me.
I am pretty selfish generally
I
speaking.
had a client tell me, I don't care what the people in the back row hear.
Yeah.
I was like,
know,
okay. So,
I mean, it's to a point, I guess.
yes, I mean, a lot of us guys like tune our stuff for us, you know, and just because your system sounds ideal to you doesn't mean that it's going to sound ideal to me.
That's very true.
It's all about your perspective,
That is very
and
true.
it's finding that happy medium if you're wanting to have other people enjoy it. If it's just you 99% of the time, tune that thing for you. Like, who cares, you know? It's but if you're creating a room for other people to come enjoy all the time, then yeah, you want to find that happy medium and kind of spread the love out. You know, you don't want all your speakers aimed to one point. You want to have everything kind of aimed to one area.
Yeah.
And so, all right. Well, before we close it out, I want to get your opinion on one final thing when it comes to subwoofers: infinite baffle.
I think for most people to even know what that means, you'd have to talk about an infinite baffle first of what it even is. But
Well, let's look at it from a pretty simple. So basically, your baffle is the amount of air, basically the size of your baffle. So infinite baffle means you're pretty much just putting a subwoofer to where it's open to the air. And so say we put a 12-inch subwoofer in this room that's an infinite baffle. We're going to vent it out the wall. So you just have a subwoofer in the wall, and then it's open on the backside to the outside of the house. Or a lot of guys will do it to the attic. So they'll put them in the ceiling. And then so the attic of the house is the box for the subwoofer. Mm-hmm. So what it does is you're able to take a cheaper subwoofer that uses less wattage, and you can push less wattage to it to get more bass.
right.
Like, I've heard guys rocking their whole freaking neighborhood with like 200 to 300 watts.
And again, that goes into what I was just saying with the efficiency. But so from what I understand about infinite baffle, which to my understanding, it's almost a little bit different. I thought the baffle has more to do with the front side of the speaker. So you got your actual speaker itself, and then the baffle is the wood that comes around the speaker. So when you talk about an infinite baffle, a wall being the infinite baffle, because the sound can't travel behind the speaker anymore.
Yeah.
It's always at the front of the speaker. Is that right? Kind of,
I'm not sure on the technicalities of the terms.
So yes, you put the speaker into, like you said, the attic or whatever, and
Yeah.
have everything go out, but then the pure driver is coming through an area where the sound wave can't wrap around.
Yeah, well, that's how a lot of guys set them up. So they'll have a box that goes up into the ceiling,
Right.
And then you've got two opposing subwoofers that are coming into each other that are in the same phase. Well, I guess if they're facing each other, they got to be the opposite phase. So they're moving together instead of against each other, and then the sound waves are
So there's
coming
both.
down through.
There's both, actually. So I actually have a Martin & Logan subwoofer that the subwoofers are in an angle to each other, and they fire out at the same time. And by doing that, you get less internal cabinet vibration and more pressure to the outside because they're offsetting the motion, right?
More air at the same time.
Yeah, so if you have two speakers working against each other like this, you get that smooth motion, but now you're also moving the
Yeah.
item with more force. Whereas if you move them against each other, the box won't vibrate because
Right.
you're getting that opposing force to each other. So if you put them into a box with a port facing out, both of them firing into each other will create more pressure to come out.
Nice.
And then you come out through that
Yeah.
baffle. But like you said, you got that infinite baffle because it's coming out of the ceiling.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have a way to wrap around, which for tuning purposes, to my understanding,
It makes it really hard to tune. You're going to get a lot of bass, but you can't really control it.
right?
It's from what so there's a group I'm in on Facebook, and I've just like started to kind of like
Right.
delve into this. And so like I said, I don't like I've not experimented with it. I haven't really talked to anybody that's done it. I've just read stuff on Facebook and I've seen videos and pictures. And so I would love to explore this. Like I'd love to try it here.
Yeah, from my understanding is you get killer bass, but it can be overwhelming because you get so much more.
That's why you don't need a lot of power. So you just like from what I've read, you can't really control it a whole lot.
Yeah, I think the hardest part with something like that is obviously, again, the space.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you got to be in an area where you can put that into the attic coming down into the room like that. Like, for me, for example, my setup is in my den, and my bedroom is right up above that.
Yeah.
I can't have the subwoofer coming into my bedroom.
No, that's one thing that guys have talked about is, like, it shakes the whole house, especially if you're venting it to the attic. I saw one where the guy vented it into his fire, like, basically just made the opening of his fireplace the face of the subwoofer box.
God, that's got to be
and like
cool,
it vented out through the freaking chimney. And he said the whole neighborhood could hear it.
I mean, because you talk about, if you're using the chimney as your base port, that is a long base port. That's
you're moving some air, man.
That would get that. And I know there's a lot of math to like calculating your length of the port and all that stuff, but normally the bigger and longer your port is, the lower your frequency gets.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You can get low with those things. Because there's nothing like stopping the movement. There's nothing kind of like, I don't know, limiting how much air you can move because there's not a box on front or back of it that's creating that pressure. So it's just moving as much as it wants to.
I feel like you'd have to be careful on what's actual drive you're picking up.
Yeah. I think it's another reason guys probably use the cheaper subs because it's probably pretty easy to max it out, overextend it.
I don't know. I think we should cut a hole in your ceiling right here and try it. How's the attic?
Not in this one. The attic's huge here.
So you got plenty of space back there. So,
yeah.
So what you're saying is in the
demo room.
In the demo room, we can cut a hole.
Yeah, we can.
And we'll make that happen.
Well, we've got
because that room's kind of small anyways, right? So you don't have a lot of floor space to put big subwoofers down. So that would be an ideal example of how that would work.
Super cool to build a box up in the attic and have 2 12s firing up there.
Yeah, let's do it.
Really making Chris mad every time I crank it up.
Let's do it.
Just you feel it all the way over here in the studio.
We do all love making Chris mad sometimes, don't we?
You're wrong, Neil. You're wrong.
No, we love him. We would never try to make him mad.
All right, I think we've come full circle on the bass talk. So on the next show, we've got some cool hypothetical questions I think we're going to talk about. So, all right, well, thanks for listening to Amateur Audiophiles, and check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. Like, follow, subscribe. Thanks for all the love and support we've received already. This is just episode number 2, and we've already got a ton of feedback. So we appreciate everybody that's commented and all the experts that we've had in the comments.
Because, we're really not experts. Let's make that clear.
The title is Amateur Audiophiles. When it comes down to it, I'm just a contractor that's an installer.
And I'm just kind of a BSer that really likes this stuff.
Yeah, it's a hobby and a passion for both of us. It's not.
Wow, that's a lot.
Wow. Speaking of which, I'm passionate about motorcycles, but I can't build one from scratch. I'm not an expert. I take my stuff to the dealership to have it worked on, mostly because I have a Ducati. I'm not cracking that thing open to save my life.
I would never work on
But just because I don't know every single moving, working part and how all the electronics work on it doesn't mean that I'm not passionate about it. It's the same thing with audio.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's the thing about movies. Movies are made for everybody to enjoy. And why not make them better at home? It doesn't matter if my system's not as good as yours. I'm still enjoying it.
That's all that matters. As long as you can enjoy it, that's really...
It's fun. It's a hobby, I like to go to the driving range at Topgolf every now and then. It doesn't mean I'm trying to play in the PGA. And if you saw me, you'd be like, yeah, you're damn right.
You'll never make it. All right,
You'll
folks.
never make it. 4.
Well, good talk.
All right, man. I'll see you on the next one.
See you later.